Hey guys, Erin here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I wanted to show you how to use Instagram to edit your photos because Instagram's built-in editing tools are actually pretty awesome. There's still a few things that you can't really get right when editing with Instagram if you have big issues with the white balance and that sort of thing, but there is a lot you can do with it. This will work just as well for a photo that you've taken on your phone versus a photo that you take on your DSLR or on a point and shoot camera. You can edit anything with these, and quite often I do like to edit on my phone when I've taken a photo on my little point and shoot camera. Anyways, let's get into this. So I'm going to show you what each tool within the Instagram editing app does. What are we going to start with? Okay. There's a lovely photo of Mitsu, my kitty. He's the best. Let's go with something fairly standard like food. So I've got a few photos from when I went out to dessert with some of my girlfriends recently. I'm just gonna pick one of those guys. Let's go with this one. I did not shoot that one square, but I'm gonna crop it to a square just because I like that a bit better. It's not a spectacular photo or anything, I just want to show you guys what everything does. So the first screen that you're going to see is the filters. I don't actually like to use filters when I edit with Instagram. I know that's what everyone associates with Instagram, is like heavily filtered images. Do keep in mind that if you do want to use a filter, you can tap it once to apply it and then tap it again to get this sliding scale where you can apply a little bit of the filter or a lot of the filter or however you like it. I would tend to err on the side of not much filter if I were you guys. Like that just looks a bit full on to me. This one's very blue. I'm not into blue. There's a lot. I guess some of them aren't too bad. That's not awful. Anyways, we're not going to use a filter today. We're going to go do it all ourselves because filters are basically just combinations of all of these tools right here pre-applied for you, so you can get similar, in lots of cases better effects by DIYing it a bit. So let's get into each slider here and see what they all do. This is the adjustment slider. It's not really a slider, I guess. It's for when your picture wasn't taken quite straight on. If you have a horizon, often these are really useful to get your horizons flat, because I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but when you look at a picture where it's a landscape or something and the horizon's not a straight line across the screen, it kind of makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. So you can fix it like that. You can get pretty extreme with it. Most photos won't need this much adjustment. And also from there, I'm going to put this back to 0. There we go. If you took a photo of a building or something like that and you're quite low to the ground, you can adjust the top and the bottom of that to make the lines straight. And also there's the grid over the photo to give you that vertical perspective. And the same thing for the horizontal. So if you were taking a photo of something you weren't facing directly towards it and it's a little bit off center, you can kind of adjust a little bit for this. It's always better to try and get the photo as accurate as possible to begin with in the first place, if you can, but these do come in handy sometimes if you're pressed for time or you didn't realize when you took the shot. But they can only adjust so much, and keep in mind that as you're doing this, you are losing some of the photo off the sides as well, so try to keep it right in camera. This photo definitely doesn't need that because it's a picture of dessert, so that's always good. Brightness is a slider that you'll probably find you want to use a lot because it literally just brightens up your photo. It does the whole picture. Some of these other tools will affect certain areas of the photo, but this one is going to brighten everything. So it's making the dark areas in that hot chocolate brighter, it's making the whites brighter as well, the table, the plates. It depends on your photo how much you want to use for this instance. I do want to brighten it up a bit. I'm going to go for about 34. Then we're going to carry on to contrast. Contrast makes white or bright areas of the photo brighter and dark areas darker, so that you'll have quite literally more contrast in your picture. That's a lot of contrast. A lot of contrast is kind of the mark of like a beginner photographer who's getting a little bit too editing happy. If you go completely the other direction, then by losing contrast, things appear more gray, more flat. You'll have more detail, I guess, in your light areas and in your dark areas. I quite like a little bit of contrast. I wouldn't go too crazy, and just a tiny bit for this shot I would go right here. And it's wonderful that you can check exactly how much you've affected your image just by pressing on it. If you're still within the tool that you chose, in this case we're within contrast at the moment, so pressing down on that will show us just the contrast adjustment that we've made. Once you click done and go back to the main menu where you can see all of these editing tools down here, then it will show you the overall effect when you tap on your photo and hold your finger down. So this is before, this is after, whereas in contrast, this is before, sorry, this is with the contrast adjustment, and this is without. So just a tad there, like it's barely noticeable, but I notice it. Structure within Lightroom, this is called clarity. This brings in a lot of contrast in the detailed areas of your picture. So with the slider up to 100 here, you can see it's brought out that marble on the table. We've got a lot of texture in the top of this hot chocolate and the chai latte over here. All of those folds in the chocolate on top of this, I don't remember what that was, creme brulee, I think. Yeah, they're really obvious, like it brings out a lot of texture, but it also kind of makes things look gritty and a little bit ugly. So this is, if you're going for that effect, if you're taking like a cool street photo or something, this is definitely a good slider for you. I wouldn't go too ham on it. I like that little bit of extra definition that it brings to things, but yeah, I'm gonna keep it pretty low. In general, if you're not sure, err on the side of a softer edit. Warmth. Instagram's editing fails it a little bit when it comes to color correction. So if you've taken a photo in warm light indoors and it looks really yellow, you can make it cooler by sliding the warmth slider down. If you've taken a photo sort of out in the bright sunlight and it looks kind of blue, then you can slide the warmth up to bring in the warmth again. But you've only got two directions here. Most of the time when you're editing white balance, which is the fancy photographer way to say that the colors are correct as to what you see with your eye, usually you'll have two options for this, one which is a blue up to yellow like this, and then also one that's red and green. And between the two of those you can find a really good color balance. But Instagram only gives you warmth, so we can only go cooler or warmer, you can't sort of do in between. This is a happy occasion with my friends, so I want to go a little bit on the warm side. Also, like coffees and stuff look good, warm, food looks good, sort of on the warmer side. If you wanted to make your photo look really cool, not just in terms of blue as a cool color, but if you want to make it look like, you know, in movies, things like The Matrix, everything looks kind of slightly blue. That's because they've edited to make everything like on the cooler side visually, and that's why it has that sort of sleek, futuristic kind of look. So if you're going for that, you probably want to err on the side of blue on the downward side of the warmth slider, but I tend to prefer things to be a bit warmer. That's just me. And also skin tones look nicer warmer generally than cooler, but that depends on the skin and that sort of thing. So we're gonna stick with about 16 here. This is the overall edit so far. It's looking pretty good. Saturation is to do with how bright the colors are in your picture. So if you turn it up, whoa, okay, that looks awful. That's really bad. It brings out all of the orange in this dessert down here in the front. We've got a kind of horrible color going on in this chai latte over here, whereas you go the other way and you're gonna end up black and white if you go all the way to the bottom of the slider. Lots of trendy Instagram photos at the moment of landscapes and stuff are like a little bit desaturated, like around sort of here, or maybe a bit far, about here-ish, where they're like subtle, there's still color there, you can still see it, but it's very kind of on the gray side, it's not bright, it's not in your face. I like colors, man, I don't know. I probably honestly wouldn't touch the saturation for this shot. I don't think it needs anything, but if you wanted to, you can take it up a little bit. Be careful with saturation when there are people in your picture, because it will also saturate their skin tones. And you guys saw how orange that dessert ended up. That's gonna happen to your skin tones as well. So you wanna steer clear of that. There are other apps that are better for editing skin. This is just what Instagram gives us. So, okay. I'm just gonna leave it at 0 for this one. I don't think it needs anything. And you can see as you go back through that the adjustments that you've made have a little dot underneath, whereas the ones you've not used don't have a little dot. So you can see what you've edited, and if you don't like what you've done, you can go back and change things, which is a handy tool. Color. This is called split toning in computer photo editing lingo. We've got two options here, shadows and highlights. So, I didn't mean to press that. Shadows, and then we've got a little rainbow of colors underneath here. So whatever you choose here, it's going to apply that color only to the shadowy, the darker parts of your picture. And you can tap that color again to get a little slider, slide it on down. This is a really good way to get that film kind of effect, which is kind of what Instagram started with. They were imitating all the like Lomo cameras, the old cute little cameras. If you have a color theme on your Instagram, if you like to keep things kind of pink, or if you like to keep things, you know, sort of blue, apparently blue gets good engagement according to the internet, then this is a good place to do it. I definitely wouldn't like completely saturate those colors in the shadows and the highlights, because that looks pretty gross. But if you just wanted to get like a little hint of it, it just gives you a bit of a different mood. It makes things quite moody. I like blue or purple in my shadows if I'm gonna do it. Honestly, I wouldn't really do this a great deal. Let's do a little bit of purple in the shadows, and in the highlights, I like a cool shadow and a warm highlight. That's just me. I'd go maybe for this sort of beige. That's it at like 50%. I don't know about 50%, that's a bit much for me. Very subtle is what we like. It just kind of warms it up a little bit more. I still like the color in the chai latte. I still like the color in the dessert. We're not getting too crazy here. Let's just go about there. Cool. And this is our split tone. It's pretty subtle. I like subtle. Subtle's good. We'll apply that. Here's our total before and after. So we're starting to look a bit fancy here, aren't we? Fade. I honestly have never used this, but it kind of just, it's a similar effect to contrast. I think this is more of a tone curve effect, so if you had a fancy editing app like Lightroom, there'll be a tone curve, which is basically the lights and the dark parts of your image mapped on a graph, where the right-hand side is the highlights and the left-hand side is the shadows, and it kind of just has flattened that tone curve. It's not a curve, it's a straight line, and it's chopping off the top half and it's chopping off the bottom half and making just like a very shallow diagonal across the picture. I guess this is kind of a way to get that sort of desaturated grey look as well. I'm not a fan. I'm not going to use it. I don't think we need it right here. But that's what fade does. I guess it kind of makes it look a bit vintage too. Like the photo's been sitting on your camera hard drive for a long time, maybe? I don't know. Highlights and shadows. Okay, highlights are a really good editing tool for when your white parts of your image are blown out, so there's no detail left in there. Often skies get really blown out, and if you use this slider, it's a good way to bring that detail back. So generally you'll be sliding your highlight slider down towards the minus end. Sometimes you might want to brighten it up. That's actually just blown out my highlights a bit too much for me there. This photo's pretty well exposed. Actually, I don't mind it up a little bit, but it depends on what you want for your picture. I like stuff bright. Let's go with that. That looks pretty good. Shadows. If you've got black parts of your image that have lost the detail and you want to bring it back, you'll be sliding your shadows up here. See how if we use these two together, it kind of looks like that faded effect from before. Where did I have that? It's hard to tell now that I've got the shadows applied so hardcore. Yep, let's go back like this. 17, that looks alright. Shadows, if you want to darken things, then you can take your shadows down, but most of the time you'll probably find you want to be sliding it up for a little bit of extra detail. I don't actually want to use it on this shot, but I do use this quite often. If you've taken a picture of a sunset, maybe, and whatever's in the foreground has become really dark and sort of silhouetted, you might be able to bring back some of the detail with this guy, and I'll show you that on a picture that I've got saved for later. Vignette, in case you guys didn't know how to pronounce this one, vignette. We'll add a dark shadow to the outside of your picture. If you want to draw attention to what's in the middle of your picture, the vignette is a good way to do that. Don't go too ham on it when it's obvious, it's kind of gross. I don't use it very often. If I did, it would be very subtle. It can come in handy for landscape shots, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm not going to use it in this shot. I don't think it needs a vignette. Here's our overall edit so far. Tilt shift is actually a fancy kind of lens you can get where you can control the focus into a particular plane and it kind of blurs out lots of the other stuff. Not like your standard bokeh, which is like when you see a picture where whatever's in the front is really sharp and what's in the background is really blurry, but it's kind of another level on top of that. So there's two types of tilt shift here, radial. It's quite similar to the vignette where it's sort of an outside to inside gradual change in the picture, but instead of being darker, the outside is blurry. And you can move your tilt shift focus point to wherever you want it just by touching on the photo and dragging it. So this one, you don't really get that touch and hold before and after kind of effect going on here until you, I guess, go back to the other screen. I'm not a fan of tilt shift personally. I think it looks kind of dodgy. You can also change the size with like a 2-finger pinch. You can make your tilt shift a lot bigger, you can make it smaller. And then the linear version is, as it sounds, radial linear. It's a line. And you can change the width of that blur to be sort of just on the outside. You can make it really narrow. You can turn it around with that 2-finger pinch as well and just rotate it to wherever you like. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of tilt shift. I'm not going to use it. Let's carry on. We've only got one option left here, and that's sharpen. Sharpen won't save a blurry photo, but it will make your details kind of pop a little bit. So keep your eye on this little wrinkle in the dessert over here in the bottom right-hand corner. That like fold of chocolate right there. You can see how the sharpen tool, that's turned all the way up. So that's a lot of sharpening, but it's made it look really crisp, really detailed, really textured. The sharpen tool in Instagram is actually pretty great. Some of the other programs will kind of, there's a lot of grain that can come with sharpening, but it's not too bad. I quite like it actually. So I'm not gonna go all the way to 100, that's a lot of sharpening, but I will go to maybe like 23. I just like how that's kind of crisped things up a little bit. Bam, and that's all I do to this photo. So here's our before, it's looking all right, but a little bit dull, a little bit gray. This is much warmer, a bit better exposed, not as dark. And I really like that you can see that gold flake on this dessert down here in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm pretty sure it was a vanilla creme brulee. It was delicious. All right, and then we go next, and then you write whatever you were gonna write, and then you share it, but I'm not gonna share it because I'm not that into the photo. I'm just gonna discard. Discard. I hope that was helpful for you guys. This is me on Instagram right here at Erin Smith Photo. Please feel free to follow me. If you use any of my editing tips today in a picture, I'd love to see it. You can tag me in your photo, or you can use the hashtag editing with Erin. Will we go with that? Yeah, let's go with that. Editing with Erin. Hashtag editing with Erin. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments or requests, let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next Tuesday.